Good afternoon. Welcome to the Chai Academy, coming to you from the Chai Center. We are we have been discussing the Holocaust. There were three classes on the rise of Hitler. We also discussed the in a previous class the origins of the yellow star that the Jews were forced to wear, and we discussed appeasement, Neville Chamberlain, his meeting with Hitler. Today, we're going to talk about Kristallnacht. Now, the up until Kristallnacht, it was basically wasn't fun and games, but the seriousness of what was about to happen finally dawned on the Jewish people. You see, from the time Hitler came into power, and for the first 5 years, right, Jews' lives were made terrible. It wasn't a good time for Jews. However, there was no death. So the first thing Hitler did was he revoked citizenship. If you're a Jew, you're no longer a German citizen. You are a Jewish citizen. Schools. If you were a Jew, you had to could not attend certain universities, and you can't any German university, and they had special schools for Aryan children, and you had to go to your or whatever. They boycotted the stores, as we discussed. That was the very first thing he did, was boycott the businesses. And another thing he did early on was he banned Jewish professions. So he attacked lawyers right away. But that's what a despot does. You get rid of law and order. And Jews were extremely limited at what they could do. On occasion, if a Jew misbehaved, he was sent to a concentration camp. At that point of time, there were no death camps. So it was called a concentration camp. And it was individual people, individual Jews, even individual Germans were sent to concentration camp. And some of them were even released. Some Jews who went to concentration camps before the Holocaust really got into high gear, were released and allowed to come home to their families. The butchering and the needling and the horrific treatment the Jews received got worse, and it got worse exponentially. It took a quantum leap, and that was on Kristallnacht. So November 9th through 10th, the Germans' attitude towards Jews, finally they showed their true colors, and it changed to wholesale violence. And I've heard it referred to as the largest pogrom in world history. What's interesting, the pretext for Kristallnacht, there's a story there. There was a low-level Nazi who was killed. It wasn't even Germany. It was Poland, or I don't know. I don't know where it was. A low-level Nazi was killed by a 17-year-old boy. The boy's name was Herschel Grinspan, and this was the pretext. So what happened was Hitler, because he revoked the citizenship, what he did was he sent 17,000 Jews back to Poland. You belong in Poland, you have Polish ancestry, go to Poland. Now the Poles, being, I say this tongue-in-cheek, lovers of Jews, refused to accept the Jews in. So the Germans said, get out. And they only had one place because of their ancestry to Poland, and Poland says, no, you're German. You're not coming in here. So this was a travesty in the Jewish history, is they were left to rot, die of starvation. but basically left to rot at the border. At the border. And Herschel Greenspan, he wasn't sent to Poland, but his parents were, and his parents were in no man's land at the border of Poland and Germany. Lost contact. He didn't know what happened with them. All he knew was that the Nazis got involved in his life. So what he did, he was so angry, is he shot a German officer. So once he shot this German officer, then Hitler said, "Oh, they're killing Nazis. We'll show them, and we'll kill them." And it was that's essentially how Kristallnacht. It's not how Kristallnacht. It was inevitable that it was going to happen. It was inevitable, but that was what made Hitler take it into to high gear. You kill a Nazi, we're going to punish you all. Now, what happened is Kristallnacht means the night of broken glass. And essentially, what happened is that almost every synagogue's their glass windows were smashed. Vast majority of the synagogues in Germany. Some were burnt to the ground. There's that famous picture of that huge synagogue being burnt to the ground. But it was they smashed the show windows, synagogue windows. And then they went attacked the Jewish stores, and and God forbid you were outside, by the way, when this happened. All said and done, that night there were 91 Jews killed. 30,000 Jews that day were rounded up and sent to concentration camps, which were not yet death camps. And out of those 30,000 Jews that were sent to concentration camps, hundreds died of mistreatment, ill treatment, starvation, etc. In the camps. Now, the world leaders denounced it. But that's as far as they got. And I think history repeats itself. I mean, there's various wars in this world, and there's various travesties and tragedies and mass killings, and the world denounces, but I don't know if it gets more than that. The American jury, when they heard about Kristallnacht, they were so overcome with fear, and they said, we have to do something. We have to help these Jews. And what they did was they founded the UJA, the United Jewish Appeal, which is, I believe, the most successful Jewish organization in terms of raising funds, and they kickstart Israel, etc., etc. So the UJA was as a response to Kristallnacht, which is an interesting take, because the Lubavitcher Rebbe, of blessed memory, he does take that position that when tragedy strikes, you got to do something bigger. You got to counteract that tragedy with something. You cannot just say oy vey's mir. So there was once a terrorist attack in Israel on 5 students in the village of Chabad, Kfar Chabad as it's called, and the Rebbe said, build. They killed 3 students. Build more yeshivas, build more houses, build more infrastructure, etc. That was the Rebbe's response. And the UGA said, okay, we're going to get involved. If the world leaders are going to denounce, we're not only going to denounce, we're going to get involved and do something practically. Now, Hitler said he chose Kristallnacht that night is because it was Martin Luther's birthday. Now, Martin Luther was a rabid anti-Semite from the 1600s, a German. And so Hitler said this is to honor his birthday. Now, you honor somebody's birthday, you usually do it with, good things, happy things. But when you're tormented and demented and twisted and sick, like Hitler, what you do is you honor somebody's birthday by hurting, maiming, killing, destroying, ruining the lives of people. That's how warped he was. So he chose a day. This was all premeditated. This was not just a groundswell of people. This was a coordinated attack on Jews and Jewish property. Now, 91 were killed. There could have been a lot more, for sure, for sure. But as we said, the worst is yet to come. Now, Hitler did something that was so, and it was so evil, and I don't know. He took it from somebody's playbook. That's what I'm thinking. Is once Kristallnacht was over, and there was glass and debris everywhere, and there was burnt buildings, and there was destroyed buildings, and there was Hitler said, because of the Jews, Germany suffered property damage. So I hereby levy a fine of 1 billion marks on the Jews collectively. You're obligated to pay the fine for having your synagogue and your stores and your houses destroyed by Nazis and by anti-Semites because you're Jewish. And I say that he took it out of a playbook because there's something that's in the back of my mind, but I can't place it. But what this did is demoralize the Jews further. Not only did we beat you up, but you're not gonna be able to sue us. You're not gonna be able to get money for us for being a negligent government and allowing this or that to happen. And nursing homes were gonna sue and sue and sue and sue. No, you're gonna pay us. You're gonna pay us. And because he owned the newspapers, there was no freedom of press. That's all they spoke about was continually, and you've seen these papers. You can Google it if you want. Continually malign the Jews, but this is an alignment. This is a chutzpah. Right? You destroy their homes and make them pay a fine, not even to repair. A fine. Now, this was a tremendous wake up for the Jewish people that remained in Germany. So we discussed that once Hitler came to power, until for the first 5 years, so Germany had about 600,000 Jews. Letty writes they had insurance, but that got canceled. I didn't know that fact. So there was 600,000 Jews. 50% of them, during those 5 years of torment, you can't have a job, you can't have a profession, you can't be this, and you can't do that, and you can't be a citizen. They ran. They got out. They escaped. The other 50% said, we got to get out. We have to get out. I mean, this is clearly, right? And once Kristallnacht happened, it was abundantly clear that they needed to really just get out of Germany. It was too late for most of them. They couldn't get out. First of all, where would they go? So the natural place to go is Israel. But we discussed this in a class a long time ago, that Israel turned its back on the Balfour Declaration, then England, which ran Israel. Israel, they called it Palestine then. It was under the British Empire. So they had something called the Balfour Declaration, which recognized the Jews' ability to have land in their ancient homeland. And then years later, they issued the white paper, which is to limit immigration of Jews into Palestine. So, and there was this contract, right? That this white paper, they will allow 15,000 Jews per year, the pittance. But even that they didn't fulfill. Even the 15,000, right? They didn't fulfill. They allowed 5,000. They never filled their quota. So this is the British Empire for you, and this is exactly why Begin went after him, because you know how many lives could have been saved, and the outcome would have been so vastly different if British had not rescinded, had not turned their back on the Balfour Declaration. So they tried to get in different places. So they got in different places in Europe, but for the most part, Europe didn't want them. And there were, once again, 300,000 German refugees. I mean, where they all going to go? United States had a quota, and Canada said something interesting. Canada said, they asked them, how many Jews are you going to take? And so some high-ranking person in Canada said, none is too many. That was Canada's response about, can you take Jews and allow them to escape the torment. Once again, this is pre-Holocaust. They didn't matter anyway. Once the Holocaust happened, they wouldn't take people anyway. They just, they wouldn't take refugees. You know the famous story of the Exodus and the ship. That's Alina. They wouldn't take him in anyway. So it was just a terrible time. I think the if there's a practical outcome of what happened here, the fact that the Jews found themselves stuck, right? And by the way, even when they did go to Europe, so there was some ran to France. What did the French do? Right? French Jews were also sent to concentration camps, right? Spain. So Franco didn't give up the Jews, but Italy, there was the ghettos were surrounded and the Jews were taken away. So even when they did, it was only a temporary measure. What they needed was a real safe haven. So the outcome of the Kristallnacht and the Holocaust was clearly an eye-opener that we need to have a Jewish state. We need to have a state where it's run by Jews and can give a safe haven to Jews. And the UN agreed, but the UN agreed and it happened, but it was the amount of blood and lives that was shed and lost because Israel needed a place it can call its own, because you can't rely on any other country. And the fact that we have Israel today is an incredible game changer. So the UJA were right. We gotta raise money and we gotta get Jews into Israel, and we gotta make sure that Israel is strong and Israel is supported, etc., etc. Because we literally they fought for their lives. Now I once heard somebody say, and I don't disagree with them. I mean, you can disagree with them on, the analogy doesn't fully add up, but I don't disagree with them. They said the difference between 1939 and 2000, and he said it a few years ago, 2017, right? That's when 18, when he said it to me, is Israel. That's the difference. So if there was ever a Holocaust that could take place, and God forbid it shouldn't happen, and we shouldn't have to run from country to country, etc. But if ever, we do have this concept called right of return. So if you care for justice, and if you care for a fellow Jew, don't turn your back on Israel. Do not. It doesn't matter. I know many people don't like Netanyahu, Israelis and Americans, and therefore, because they don't like Netanyahu, they shun Israel. It's a mistake. Israel is there for all of us. There are those that feel that Israel's in the wrong, and Israel's this and Israel's that. In the BDS movement, and so to any Jew in the BDS movement, or Students for Peace, and all these type of movements, should be careful that they don't hurt Israel, because Israel's the only place where a Jew is allowed to enter without questions asked. Right? It's the only place, right, where you would not be held back at the border, and you make it into Israel, they'll absorb you, they'll take care of you, and yeah, it's not easy. It's not an easy country to live in necessarily. Things are expensive, and the salaries are not as high. But they will. The bottom line is your lives will be saved. So, if anybody has this, they have this stuck in their craw that Israel's this and Israel's that, and Israel should be this and Israel should not be funded. And so it's a mistake. It's a mistake. Whatever your feelings are about Israel, yeah, we have to protect. We have to protect our safe haven for all Jews, not just Jews living in the United States, and we can't be flippant, and we must not throw Egypt to throw Israel to Egypt, Israel to Syria, Israel, give back land, etc., and throw Israel to the wolves. God bless. More to come. Be well.